Dawn came thin and pale, as if the sun had to fight its way through the weight of the north to be seen at all. The light bled slowly into the snowfield, turning the world a washed-out gray, and Winterfell rose from it like a scar, dark stone, thick walls, towers blunt as fists. Smoke drifted from inside the castle, lazy and confident. Ramsay Bolton's hearths burned warm while men outside stamped their feet to keep blood moving. Jon Snow stood near a low campfire that had been fed since midnight. It should have been struggling against the wind, a small orange flicker in a wide white world. Instead it burned steadily, flame tall and bright, as if the wood remembered summer. Jon did not look at it directly, but he felt it. He felt the fire's attention the way he felt a person's gaze on the back of his neck. Sansa Stark watched Winterfell without blinking. The fur had framed her face, and the cold painted her cheeks with the faint flush of life, but her eyes were hard. Those eyes had seen too much. They had learned not to beg. Davos Seaworth approached with slow care, as if sudden movement might crack something fragile between them. He held a helmet under his arm. A plain steel thing, dented and scratched, not the sort a lord would wear. "You should eat," he said, offering a chunk of bread that looked more like stone than food. Jon took it because Davos needed him to. He chewed, tasting nothing. Brienne of Tarth tightened the straps on her gauntlets nearby, checking her sword belt. Her face set in the grim calm of someone who had lived in battle long enough to know that courage was often just exhaustion that refused to lie down. Tormund Giantsbane bellowed across the camp, corralling free folk into loose lines. His voice carried like a horn. Men laughed with him because laughter was better than shaking. Jon could hear fear beneath the laughter anyway. Sansa's gaze stayed on the castle. "He'll come out," she said, her voice low enough that it seemed meant for the snow more than for Jon. "He likes to be seen." Jon's jaw tightened. "Let him." Sansa's hands were clasped inside her sleeves, hidden. "He'll have Rickon," she said. Jon's breath caught as if he had swallowed ice. The name landed in him with a dull, aching weight. Rickon Stark. Wild, half-feral boy who had chased wolves through Winterfell's halls, who had thrown mud at Jon and laughed, who had clung to their mother's skirts when the world began to break. Jon had not let himself think of Rickon too much, because thinking of him meant thinking of everything they had lost. "How do you know?" Jon asked. Sansa's mouth tightened. "I know Ramsay," she said, and there was something bitter in the words that made Jon's scars tingle. "If he has a Stark boy, he'll use him. He'll put him in front of you like a bone thrown to a starving dog and watch to see if you run." Jon's hand drifted unconsciously toward Longclaw's hilt. The Valyrian steel felt cool, but beneath the cool there was a faint wah. RMTH, like a living thing resting. "If Rickon is there." "He's there," Sansa cut in, eyes still on the walls. "And if Ramsay sends him out, you cannot chase him. You cannot." She turned then, finally, and fixed Jon with a stare that felt like a command. "He wants you to forget the army. He wants you to forget the plan. He wants you to be a brother instead of a commander." Jon swallowed. The fire in his chest stirred, hot and sharp, as if it resented being told no. "He is my brother," Jon said, voice rough. "So am I," Sansa said, and for a heartbeat the iron in her gaze cracked, showing something raw beneath. "And if you die in that field, Ramsay wins. He wins everything. He will take me again. He will take the north. He will laugh while he does it." Davos cleared his throat softly, drawing their attention like a rope pulled tight. "Lady Sansa's right," he said, the words reluctant but firm. "If he uses the boy, it's cruel, but it's war. We can't let him steer us by the heart." Jon looked away to the campfire, to the way the flame leaned slightly toward his boots. He hated the choice. He hated that war demanded it. He hated Ramsay Bolton for making it even possible. "I won't let him have Rickon," Jon said, and the words came out like a vow. Sansa's expression did not soften. "Then win," she said. "Win, and then we take Rickon back from whatever place Ramsay keeps him." Her voice lowered. "If he's still alive." The possibility hung between them like frost. Jon felt the heat in his chest surge in answer, not comfort but anger. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat and forced himself to breathe slow. He could not afford to burn. Not yet. Ghost pressed his shoulder against Jon's leg. The direwolf's fur was thick and cold at the surface, warm beneath. Jon rested his hand on Ghost's head and felt the steady strength there. He let it anchor him. Across the field, Winterfell's gates creaked. A line of men appeared on the walls, dark against stone, watching like crows. Ramsay Bolton was waking. Ramsay Bolton was preparing to play. Jon opened his eyes and looked at the castle that had been his home. "Let him come out," Jon said quietly, "and when he does, we end it." Inside Winterfell, warmth clung to stone like a lie. The great hall's hearth roared, throwing orange light across timber beams and banners that did not belong. The flayed man of House Bolton hung where the direwolf had once watched, and Ramsay Bolton liked it there. He liked seeing old power replaced by new cruelty. It made him feel righteous in the way mad men often did. Roose Bolton lay on the floor with his eyes open, staring at nothing. Blood had spread beneath him in a dark fan, soaking into rushes. His face was oddly calm, as if he had known all along that his son would be the blade that ended him. Ramsay had not even bothered to close his father's eyes. A muffled sound came from behind a door, Valda Frey's voice, pleading, and beneath it the thin cry of an infant. Ramsay ignored it. There were cries in Winterfell every day. They were as common as smoke. He walked the battlements with an easy stride, hands clasped behind his back as if he were a lord enjoying a morning stroll. The cold outside bit at his cheeks, but he wore enough fur to make it irrelevant. Below him, the snowfield was dotted with enemy fires, tiny sparks against white. Men moved like ants. He could not hear their voices, but he could imagine them, whispering, praying, sharpening steel. He smiled. "My lord," a guard said behind him, voice careful. "They're ready." "Of course they are," Ramsay said lightly. "They came all this way to die, didn't they?" He paused and tilted his head as if listening to the castle itself. "It's almost polite." He reached the gatehouse and peered down. The lines outside were forming. He could see a banner that might once have been stark, now stitched hastily, the dire wolf looking half-remembered. He could see wildlings, big men in furs too far south, too loud even at a distance. He could see a cluster of armored knights that smelled of White Harbor's money. He could see, near the front, a dark figure with a pale wolf moving beside him. Jon Snow. Ramsay's smile widened. There had been talk, whispered nonsense from frightened men, about Jon Snow dying and coming back. Ramsay liked stories. He liked breaking them. "Bring the boy," he said. Rickon Stark was dragged forward, chains clinking. The child had grown since Ramsay had taken him, but not enough. His hair was shaggy, his cheeks hollow. He wore a thin tunic under a ragged cloak, and the cold had turned his lips a bruised blue. When Ramsay looked at him, Rickon flinched as if expecting a blow. Ramsay crouched so their faces were level. He ran a gloved finger along Rickon's cheek, gentle as a lover. "Do you know what you are?" Ramsay asked softly. Rickon's eyes burned with hatred. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The hate was loud enough. Ramsay chuckled. "You're a message," he said. "You're what happens to Starks." He straightened and nodded to the guard holding Rickon's chain. "Don't let him freeze before we use him." A man approached from the stairwell, breath steaming, eyes wide. "My lord," he said, "the men are talking. They say the bastard. They say he can't burn." Ramsay's brows lifted. "Can't burn? They say he held fire," the man babbled, "in his hand, like it was nothing." Ramsay stared out over the field again, gaze narrowing. A strange thrill flickered in him. Something new, something sharp. Ramsay loved new things, new ways to hurt, new ways to win. "Well," Ramsay murmured, "that sounds fun." He turned and strode back along the wall walk. The torches lining the battlements snapped in the wind. Snow drifted down, soft and steady. covering Roose Bolton's blood in a thin white skin. Ramsay did not look at his father's corpse. He did not look at Valda Frey's closed door. He looked only at the field where Jon Snow waited, and he felt the familiar hunger rise, the one that made him smile even when no one was watching. If Jon Snow was fire now, Ramsay would learn how fire screamed. They gathered in a shallow hollow where the wind bit less. A rough command circle trampled into the snow. Men stood shoulder to shoulder, breath rising in clouds. Armor creaked, furs rustled. The stink of sweat and horse and old fear clung to them like smoke. Davos Seaworth knelt and scraped lines into the snow with the tip of a dagger, turning the white into a map. Winterfell's walls became a rectangle. The gate became a notch. Hills became ridges. Lines of men became smears of black ash sprinkled over snow. "They'll try to draw us in," Davos said, voice blunt. "They'll send cavalry, then the line. If we rush the walls, we die. If we let them split us, we die." Lyanna Mormont stood with her arms crossed, bearskin cloak swallowing her small frame, eyes sharp as daggers. She looked like she belonged on a winter carving, not in a war council of men twice her size. "We hold the line," she said. "If they want blood, they can choke on it." Wyman Manderly's knights waited nearby in armor trimmed with sea green cloth, their faces hidden behind helms, their posture disciplined. They were not free folk. They were not mountain clans. They were men trained to fight in rows and obey orders. Jon needed them. He needed everyone. Tormund Giantsbane leaned on his axe with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Bolton men love their pretty lines," he said. "Free folk love breaking pretty things." Brienne of Tarth scanned the ridgeline beyond them with a soldier's habit, eyes narrowing at every shadow. Podrick Payne stood close, trying to mimic her calm and failing. Sansa Stark watched Jon, not the snow map. Jon could feel her gaze like a hand on his shoulder. She knew Ramsay. She knew the cruelty that would come dressed as strategy. Jon looked at Davos's lines, then at the men gathered. "We don't win by being braver," he said, his voice carried in the cold. "We win by being less stupid than Ramsay Bolton expects." A few men chuckled, nervous. Jon drew a slow breath. He could feel the fire in his chest, steady, waiting. It wanted action. It wanted to leap. "We hold," Jon continued. "Spears in front, shields behind, archers ready. When their cavalry charges, we don't break. We don't chase. We let them slam into us and bleed." Tormund snorted. "And if they don't charge?" "They will," Sansa said quietly. "Ramsay always wants to watch people panic." Jon nodded once. "When he sends something he thinks will make us panic, we do nothing," he said. "We hold." Davos's dagger scraped another line. "If they try to encircle," he warned. "We." Jon's gaze drifted to the field behind them where their campfires still smoldered. He could feel the flames even at a distance, faint and warm. An idea had been circling him all night like a wolf, and he had tried not to look at it. Looking at it meant admitting what he could do. "We make a barrier," Jon said. Davos blinked. "A barrier?" Jon hesitated. He could feel eyes on him now, curious, fearful. Lyanna Mormont watched. Him with the blunt expectation of someone who did not care about myths, only results. Tormund looked almost delighted. Sansa's expression tightened slightly, as if she feared what Jon might offer. Jon kept his voice even. "Pitch," he said. "Oil. Anything that burns. We lay it behind our line in a half ring. If they try to push us into a crush, we light it. It gives us space. It keeps their horses from closing." Davos's eyes narrowed. "We can light it," he said slowly, thinking. "Flaming arrows." Jon's mouth tightened. "No," he said. The word came sharper than he intended. He forced himself to soften. "If we rely on arrows, the wind can ruin it. If we rely on torches, men have to run with them." He looked at the faces around him. "If I light it, it lights." A silence fell. It was not the silence of agreement. It was the silence of men staring at something that did not fit into their world. Lyanna Mormont's voice cut through first. "Can you do it?" she demanded. Jon's scars tingled. He could almost feel flame licking at his fingertips. "Yes," he said. The truth tasted like iron. Sansa spoke, quiet but firm. "And can you stop it?" Jon's throat tightened. That was the harder question. He remembered the way the wall's flame had surged, unstoppable until it chose to vanish. He remembered how easy it felt to take the campfire's heat into himself, how hungry it was to be used. "I can," Jon said, though he was not entirely sure. "I have to." Brienne's gaze stayed on Jon's face. "If you do this," she said, voice measured, "men will see. They will talk. They will fear you." "They already do," Jon replied, and the bitterness surprised him. Davos set the dagger down. "Then make the fear useful," he said, and Jon heard the grim acceptance in him. "If your fire keeps them alive, they'll follow it." Jon looked around the circle. Free folk leaders with scars and hard eyes. Northern men with old grudges carved into their faces. Knights who had never fought beside wildlings in their lives. A little bear of a girl who had offered her house's blood. "All right," Jon said. "We do it. We hold the line. We make the ring. We do not break." He met Sansa's eyes. "If Ramsay brings Rickon out," he said, and the words cost him. "I won't run." Sansa's face did not change, but her eyes softened by the smallest degree. "Good," she said, like someone praising a child for swallowing poison without choking. Jon straightened. The cold wind tugged at his cloak. The snow whispered against armor. "Take your places," Jon ordered. Men moved, breaking from the circle, filing into lines. Swords slid into grips. Shields were raised and tested. Horses snorted. Jon watched them go and felt the fire in his chest coil tighter, like a dragon folding its wings before flight. Soon there would be no more planning, only blood and breath. Soon Winterfell would decide what Jon Snow truly was. The horns sounded from Winterfell like the bellow of an angry beast. The gates creaked open, and Ramsay Bolton rode out as if stepping onto a stage. He wore dark fur and leather, his posture loose, confident. Bolton banners snapped behind him, flayed men fluttering like obscene prayers. Behind Ramsay came the army. Lines of men in mail and boiled leather, shields painted with sigils Jon had learned to hate. Umber, Karstark, Bolton. They moved with disciplined cruelty, a machine built to grind. And before them, a lone, stumbling Rickon Stark. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to that small figure running through the snow, chains gone but fear clinging to him like frost. His hair whipped in the wind. His arms flailed as he ran, not in a straight line but in the desperate, panicked way of someone who had never been taught how to survive an arrow's eye. Jon's grip on his reins tightened until his knuckles ached. He felt his chest constrict. The fire in him surged, rising like a scream. Sansa Stark's voice cut through from behind him, sharp as a whip. "Jon, don't." Davos Seaworth shouted something too, but Jon barely heard. Rickon ran toward them, toward Jon, toward the thin line of men and wildlings waiting with spears. Jon could see Rickon's mouth open in a silent cry. Jon could see Ramsay Bolton lift his bow with leisurely grace. Time stretched. Jon's horse shifted under him, sensing his tension. Ghost snarled at Jon's side, fur bristling, red eyes fixed on the running boy. Ramsay Bolton drew the bowstring back. Jon's mind screamed at him to move, to ride, to reach Rickon, to be a brother. He remembered Sansa's warning. He remembered the trap. He remembered that if he ran, thousands would die. He stayed. Ramsay's arrow flew, cut the air like a whisper. Rickon jerked, as if yanked by an invisible hand. He fell forward into the snow, arms outstretched, and the world seemed to hold its breath. For a heartbeat, Rickon lay still. Then his fingers twitched once and went slack. A sound broke from Jon's throat, half growl, half prayer. His vision blurred. The fire in his chest surged so hard he felt it in his teeth. He tasted smoke. Men around him murmured, cursed, cried out. A wildling woman screamed Rickon's name even though she had never known him. Lyanna Mormont stood like stone, her face pale. Ramsay Bolton smiled from his horse. Then the arrows began. They rose from Winterfell's walls in a dark cloud, a swarm of death blotting the pale sky. Jon's men lifted shields. Spears angled up. Horses screamed as arrows found flesh. Jon felt the first arrow thud into a shield near his shoulder. He flinched instinctively. Another struck the ground at his horse's feet, quivering. A third grazed a man's helmet, spinning him half around. "Hold!" Jon shouted, and his voice tore through the chaos. "Hold!" The line held, shields locked. Men crouched behind wood and iron. Arrows rattled like hail. Ramsay Bolton's cavalry surged forward, black S. Hapes cutting through snow. Hoofs pounded. The ground trembled. "Ready!" Davos Seaworth bellowed behind the line, his voice raw. "Ready!" Jon lifted Longclaw, the blade catching the pale light. He felt warmth seep into the steel, faint but steady, as if the sword were waking alongside him. The cavalry hit. It was like a wave of iron and muscle slamming into a shore of spears. Horses screamed as they impaled themselves. Men toppled. Spears snapped. Shields buckled. Snow churned into mud beneath pounding hooves and scrambling boots. Jon's horse reared as a dying horse crashed into it. Jon swung down hard, boots hitting churned snow. He drew Longclaw fully, and the Valyrian steel hummed faintly in the cold. The battle swallowed thought. Jon hacked at a man's throat, felt blood spray hot across his cheek. He parried an axe, the impact jolting his arm. He shoved a shield aside and drove Longclaw into a belly, then yanked it free with a wet sound. Men screamed. Horses screamed. The air filled with metal and breath and fear. Jon saw Ramsay Bolton turn his horse and retreat behind his lines, satisfied. The bastard had fired his arrow, sprung his trap, and now he watched the slaughter unfold like entertainment. Jon's eyes found Rickon's body, half covered by trampled snow. Something in Jon cracked. He forced it shut. "Push!" Jon roared, voice breaking. "Push them back!" Men surged. Wildlings howled. The line advanced by inches, by blood, by stubbornness. Above it all, the snow kept falling, soft and indifferent, settling on dead faces like a mercy they did not deserve. The snowfield became a butcher's yard. It happened slowly at first, then all at once. Bodies fell and did not get up. Horses collapsed, legs snapped, eyes rolling white. Men tripped over the dead and were cut down while scrambling to stand. The ground, once clean, turned to churned brown slush, then to a dark red mire that clung to boots and dragged at ankles like hands. Jon Snow fought with Longclaw as if the blade were the only thing tethering him to himself. Tormund Giantsbane crashed into the melee beside him, axe swinging in brutal arcs. He laughed once when his axe split a helm, but the sound was thin, strained. Even Tormund's joy could be drowned by enough blood. "Crow!" Tormund bellowed, slamming his shoulder into a Bolton soldier and sending him sprawling. "Your pretty lines are getting ugly. They're supposed to..." Jon rasped back, and then he had no breath for words. He parried a sword and felt the impact shudder through his arm. The man on the other side snarled, breath stinking of ale and fear. Jon stepped in, hooked the man's blade aside, and drove Longclaw up under his ribs. The man choked, eyes widening, and Jon yanked the sword free, already turning. A volley of arrows hissed overhead. Men screamed as shafts found shoulders, throats, eyes. Jon ducked behind a shield just as an arrow slammed into it, the force jolting his wrist. He looked down and saw the arrowhead buried deep in wood, black fletching trembling. The sight was strangely calm. He pulled the arrow out with one hard jerk and tossed it aside. His breath came out as smoke. He realized it only when he saw a Bolton soldier stare at him, eyes widening in horror. The man's blade faltered. Jon's next strike took his hand off at the wrist. The hand fell into the mud, fingers still curled. Brienne of Tarth fought a few paces away, her movements precise, controlled. She looked like an executioner in a storm, blade rising and falling with grim certainty. A Bolton man lunged at her. She sidestepped and sliced his hamstring clean, then finished him without hesitation. Podrick Payne was not far behind, shaking but holding his ground, stabbing where Brienne pointed him like a needle driven by a steady hand. Davos Seaworth shouted orders behind the line, his voice raw from yelling. "Hold!" he screamed. "Hold the line! Don't chase, don't!" A crash of bodies cut his words off. Jon glimpsed Davos through the chaos, saw him slam his shoulder into a shield-bearing man to keep the line from buckling, saw him drag a fallen boy back behind the shields with the desperation of someone who refused to watch another child die. The Bolton infantry advanced in dense rows, shields locked, spears bristling. They moved like a wall of iron, pressing, forcing Jon's men back. The dead piled higher, creating a ridge of bodies that turned retreat into stumbling. Men slipped on blood-slick armor, hands grabbed at boots. A horse screamed as it tried to climb over corpses and failed. Jon fought his way onto the mound of dead without meaning to. One moment he was in mud. The next he was stepping on a man's chest plate, the metal still warm under his boot. He looked down and saw the man's eyes open, staring up at him, mouth slack. Jon's stomach clenched. This was what Ramsay wanted. A crush, panic, a drowning in bodies. A Bolton soldier shoved hard with his shield, trying to knock Jon off the mound. Jon staggered, arms flailing for balance. For a split second he saw the world tilt, snow, sky, steel. Then the fire in his chest surged, fierce and instinctive, and heat rippled outward from him like a breath. The snow beneath his boots hissed, melting. Steam rose around his legs. The Bolton soldier's eyes widened as if he had stepped too close to a hearth. Jon's balance steadied. He roared, wordless, furious, and drove forward. Longclaw cut through mail as if it were cloth, the Valyrian steel biting deep. Jon felt the blade's warmth grow with each strike, as if it drank his heat and gave it back as sharpness. "Back!" Jon shouted, voice cracking. "Back!" But there was nowhere to go. The Bolton line pressed harder, encircling. Jon saw it now. Shields swinging in, spears angling, men closing like a noose. Ramsay Bolton's trap, tightening. Tormund slammed into Jon's shoulder, nearly knocking him over. "They're closing us," he shouted, eyes wild. "Crow!" Jon looked to the rear. The half-ring of pitch and oil lay hidden beneath snow, laid by men in the night. It was there. It was their last breath. He met Davos Seaworth's gaze across the chaos. Davos saw the encirclement too. He lifted an arm, signaling frantically, trying to pull men back toward the ring without breaking the line. Jon's scars tingled as if warning him. The fire in his chest coiled, hungry, and for the first time Jon understood what dragons must feel before they breathe. Pressure building, heat gathering, a need to release. He turned his face toward the ring in the snow. "Now," Jon whispered, and the word was not for men, but for the flame itself. The fire answered. It did not come as a spark struck from flint. It came as a rush, fast, eager, as if the flame had been crouched under the snow waiting for Jon's permission to leap. The pitch and oil hidden beneath the white caught in an instant, the half-ring igniting in a racing line that snapped and roared across the field. Men cried out, horses screamed. The sudden heat slapped faces raw. Snow hissed and vanished into steam. Jon felt it as if it were an extension of his own breath. The moment the ring caught, the pressure in his chest eased, and warmth flooded outward through his arms, through his scars, through the air around him. He did not need to hold his hands up dramatically. He did not need to chant. He simply existed, and fire obeyed. Bolton soldiers recoiled in surprise and fear. Their shield wall hesitated. Horses shied, nostrils flaring, hooves skittering on mud. For a heartbeat, the encirclement loosened. Not by much, but enough. Tormund Giantsbane threw back his head and howled, the sound wild and savage. "Fire Crow," he roared. "Fire Crow." The free folk answered with their own cries, banging axes on shields, faces lit by orange glow. Fear turned in their eyes. Fear of dying, fear of Jon, fear of the world's strange new rules, and hardened into something that looked almost like hope. Davos Seaworth stared at the burning line as if he had seen the sea rise and catch fire. He lifted a hand, then lowered it, not knowing whether to pray or swear. Sansa Stark watched from the ridge behind the camp, her hands clenched so tight her knuckles whitened. Tears glittered at the corners of her eyes and froze in the wind. She did not look away from the fire. She did not look away from Jon. The ring of flame did what Jon had promised. It gave them space. Bolton men could not push into it without burning. Bolton horses would not charge through it. The crush eased, the pressure on Jon's men's backs loosening like a rope cut. "Fall back," Davos shouted, finding his voice again. "Fall back to the fire. Reform." Men stumbled backward, dragging wounded, hauling shields, stepping over dead. They formed a ragged line along the fire's edge, using heat as a wall behind them. Some men stared at the flames too long and nearly tripped, their faces pale with superstition. Bolton archers on the flanks adjusted, loosing arrows toward the line. The shafts hissed through the air, some striking shields, some finding flesh. A few struck near the fire and caught, igniting briefly before being swallowed by the blaze. Jon stood near the center of the half-ring, Longclaw in his hand, his breath coming out in thin streams of smoke. He could feel the fire behind him roaring, and with it came a dangerous sense of ease. It would be so simple to push the flames forward, to send them racing into Bolton lines, to turn men into screaming torches. The thought made his stomach twist. He was not Ramsay Bolton. He would not become Ramsay Bolton with a different weapon. He forced the fire to hold its place, to burn only where the pitch lay. It responded, obedient but eager, like a hound straining at its leash. A Bolton commander shouted orders, trying to restore their momentum. Men stepped forward cautiously, shields raised against heat. Their line wavered, unsure. Jon saw Ramsay Bolton in the distance, still mounted, still watching. Even from far away, Jon could feel the bastard's attention like a knife point. Ramsay's posture was relaxed, but Jon saw the slight tilt of his head, the way a hunter watches an animal do something unexpected. Ramsay had wanted panic. Jon had given him fire. For a moment, the battle hung in a strange balance, heat and cold wrestling in the air. Then Jon heard it, a new sound cutting through the roar and screams. Not a horn from Winterfell, not a shout from the free folk. Hooves, many hooves. Coming fast. Jon's head snapped toward the ridgeline to the east, where the snowfield met the horizon. Dark shapes appeared against the pale sky, lines of mounted men, armor glinting dully, banners whipping in the wind. Falcon, crescent moon, the Vale. The knights of the Vale hit the Bolton flank like a storm breaking. They came down the slope in tight formation, lances lowered, armor dark with road grime, banners snapping hard. Their horses threw up slush and blood as they charged, hoofs pounding so loudly Jon felt it through the mud beneath his boots. Bolton men turned too late. Shields swung awkwardly. Spears angled, but not in time. The first impact was a brutal crack of wood and bone. Lances pierced mail. Men flew backward. Horses screamed and trampled. The Bolton line that had been a slow, crushing machine became a body hit from the sides, staggering, twisting, breaking. A roar went up from Jon's army. The sound was not joy exactly. It was release. It was the breath of men who had been drowning and suddenly found air. Sansa Stark stood rigid on the ridge, watching the charge. She did not smile. Her face was tight, eyes bright with something that might have been vindication or grief or both. Jon understood in a sick, twisting way that she had known. She had sent for them. She had carried that secret while men died in the snow below. Behind the Vale line, riding with unhurried grace, Peter Baelish appeared like a shadow that had learned to wear silk. He sat his horse as if he were at a court tourney, not a battlefield. His cloak snapped in the wind. His eyes glittered with the satisfaction of arriving at the moment that made him most useful. Jon's gut tightened at the sight, a sour taste rising. He remembered King's Landing. He remembered whispers and lies that killed as cleanly as daggers. The Vale was salvation wrapped around a poison. But in the field, salvation was what it was. Tormund Giantsbane bellowed with laughter as the Bolton flank crumpled. He surged forward, axe swinging, free folk screaming war cries. "Now!" he roared. "Now we take him!" Jon's men advanced, pushing off the fire line, shields raised. The half-ring of flame still burned behind them, roaring, but now it felt less like a desperate wall and more like a banner, the fire itself announcing that Jon Snow still stood. Bolton's soldiers began to break. Some tried to flee toward Winterfell. Others turned and fought in frantic, ugly bursts, but their discipline was gone. Fear had finally found them. Jon moved through the chaos like a dark flame. He cut down a man trying to crawl away, then pulled his sword free and looked up. Ramsay Bolton was retreating now, his horse already turning toward Winterfell's gates. The bastard's confidence had cracked, just enough to show panic beneath. Jon felt the fire in his chest flare, hungry. He wanted to chase Ramsay. He wanted to drag him off his horse and cut his smile away. He forced himself to slow. "Hold the line," Davos shouted, trying to keep men from scattering in pursuit. "Don't let them draw you apart." But the battle's momentum was a beast once unleashed. Men ran. Men screamed. Men chased. The snowfield filled with the chaos of victory. Messy, dangerous, and not complete. Jon sprinted toward the path Ramsay had taken, boots slipping in slush. Ghost bounded beside him, silent, a white streak through red mud. Ahead, the Winterfell gates began to close. "Open!" Ramsay Bolton shouted from within the retreating cluster of men, voice shrill with sudden urgency. Bolton guards scrambled. The gates heavy wood creaked as it swung inward. Jon saw his chance, one narrow moment where speed might do what armies could not. He pushed harder, lungs pulling air in clean, endless drafts. His breath smoked. Heat rose in him, building. An arrow hissed past his ear and vanished into snow. Another struck a running man and dropped him. Jon did not slow. The gate's gap narrowed. The last Bolton men slipped through. Ramsay's horse disappeared into shadow. Jon reached the gate as it slammed shut. The impact shook the air. Snow fell from the wall's ledges in soft cascades. Jon stopped, chest heaving, long claw in his hand. He stared at the wooden gate as if he could will it open by hatred alone. Behind him, the field echoed with screams. Dying men, wounded horses, the groans of those pinned under bodies. The Vale Knights rode through the remnants, finishing what they had started. The Bolton army was breaking, but victory was not yet peace. Victory still bled. Sansa approached behind Jon, flanked by Brienne of Tarth and Podrick Payne, her boots crunching in snow that had not yet been churned. Her eyes went to the closed gate, then to Jon's face. "You didn't run," she said, her voice quiet. Jon's gaze stayed on the gate. "Rickon," he whispered, and the name was a wound. Sansa's face tightened. "I'm sorry." Jon turned sharply, anger rising. "You knew the Vale was coming," he hissed. Sansa did not flinch. "If I told you," she said, "you would have waited. You would have hesitated. Ramsay would have seen it. He would have changed his game." Her voice hardened. "We needed surprise. We needed him to believe he was winning." Jon stared at her, the fire in his chest snarling, desperate for release. He wanted to shout. He wanted to accuse. He wanted to burn the truth into the snow. Then he looked at her face, at the exhaustion carved into it, at the grief held tight behind her eyes, and he understood the ugly truth. She had done what she thought necessary. She had learned necessity the hard way. Jon swallowed the anger down until it sat like a coal in his gut. "Winterfell isn't ours yet," he said, forcing his voice steady. "He's inside." Sansa nodded once. "Then we take it." Jon looked up at the walls and felt the fire in him stir again, eager. The battle outside had broken Ramsay's army. Now they would break Ramsay Bolton himself. Winterfell's gate did not care who had once ruled within. It was heavy oak reinforced with iron, built to endure winter and war and men who believed stone could make them safe. Jon Snow stood before it with long claw drawn, the blade dark against the pale. Around him, the survivors gathered in a ragged crescent. Free folk with blood on their furs, northern men limping, Vale knights still mounted, faces hidden behind helms. They were victorious, but victory looked like exhaustion and grief. The snowfield behind them was littered with bodies, and the wind carried the copper tang of blood into everything. Davos Seaworth moved among the men, barking orders hoarsely. "Torches! Bring the torches up! Ladders ready!" He glanced at Jon, worry in his eyes. "We can starve him out." "We don't have time," Jon said. Sansa stepped up beside him, her cloak speckled with snow and ash. "He'll hurt people if we wait," she said. "He'll make it a game." Brienne of Tartha's gaze flicked over the walls, noting the movement of archers behind crenellations. "They'll pour arrows on ladders," she warned, "and boiling oil. We'll lose men." Jon stared at the gate. He could feel the iron fittings, hinges, bands, spikes, cold and stubborn. He could feel the torches burning behind him, their flames jittering in the wind, and he could feel the fire inside his chest, coiled tight, eager to be used. He did not want to burn Winterfell. He did not want to turn the castle of his childhood into a charred ruin. Stone could be reclaimed, memory could not, but he could use heat without destruction. He hoped. Jon sheathed Longclaw and stepped closer. Men murmured behind him, wary. Some made signs against sorcery. Others leaned in, hungry to see. He pressed both palms against the iron band that crossed the gate. The metal was cold enough to sting a normal man. Jon felt it and felt nothing. He drew a slow breath, deep, and reached inward, not to anger, not to grief, but to that steady warmth under his ribs. He imagined it flowing out through his arms the way the wall's hidden heat had flowed into him. Heat surged. The iron under his palms warmed quickly. Then more quickly, the cold chased away by something fierce. Steam rose where snow touched metal. The smell of hot iron filled Jon's nose, sharp and clean. Behind the gate, Jon heard shouts, Bolton men noticing the change. He heard frantic footsteps. Curse. The iron bands began to creak, expanding slightly. The nails holding them groaned as wood protested. The smell of burning pitch rose faintly, not from flame but from heat seeping into old resin. Jon pushed more warmth into the metal, careful. Too much and the wood would catch, too little and nothing would happen. Sweat should have formed on his brow. It did not. He felt the heat leave him and still felt full. A loud crack split the air as one iron nail popped free, snapping from its hold. Another followed. The band warped outward, losing its grip on the oak. "Davose." A Worth stared, mouth slightly open. "Seven save us," he breathed. Tormund Giantsbane laughed, delighted. "He's cooking your bloody gate." Jon did not answer. His focus narrowed to the iron and wood beneath his hands, to the sensation of stubborn resistance giving way. The iron band buckled, then sagged. The gate shuddered. "Now!" Brienne shouted, and Vale men surged forward with a heavy ram they had dragged from the field, slamming it into the weakened wood. The gate trembled. Another crack echoed. Wood splintered where iron had loosened. Jon stepped back, hands dropping, heat still radiating from his palms. Steam curled around his fingers. The ram hit again. The gate gave with a scream of tearing oak, collapsing inward in a shower of splinters. Men surged through the opening, shields up, swords drawn. Arrows rained from above. A Vale knight took one in the neck and toppled, blood spraying. A wildling woman screamed and kept running anyway. Brienne raised her shield and pressed forward, cutting down the first Bolton man who charged. Jon drew Longclaw again and stepped into Winterfell. The courtyard inside was a chaos of snow and blood and shouting. Bolton men fought desperately, backs to walls. The loyalists, if they could be called loyal to anything other than survival, fell fast. Jon moved through it like a dark heat. He parried a spear thrust, snapped the shaft with a twist, and drove Longclaw into the spearman's throat. He kicked the man away and kept moving, eyes searching. Ramsay Bolton would not be here, not in the open. Ramsay liked control. Ramsay liked shadows. Sansa fought behind the lines, not with sword, but with command, shouting orders, directing men to flank, to clear stairwells, to take the armory. She looked like a Stark again, not because she wore fur, but because she stood where men could see her and did not flinch. Jon pushed toward the inner keep, following the pull of instinct and hatred. He could feel the castle around him, stone cold, iron colder. Yet beneath it all, he felt his own warmth, steady as a forge. Winterfell had been taken once by cruelty. Now it would be taken back by something fiercer, refusal. They found Ramsay Bolton where beasts were kept. He had run, of course. Ramsay always ran when the game stopped being his. He had slipped through corridors, down stairwells, past servants and guards, toward the one place in Winterfell where he was always strongest. The Kennels. The smell hit Jon before he saw him. Wet fur, old filth, meat gone sour. The air was thick with panting and growling. Ramsay stood with his back to the kennel gate, bow in his hand, quiver nearly empty. Mud splattered his boots. Blood streaked one cheek, not his own. His smile was still there, but it wavered now, cracked at the edges. His eyes darted like an animal's. Jon Snow stepped into the kennel yard with Longclaw drawn. Behind him came Brienne of Tarth, shield raised, face hard. Davos Seaworth lingered near the archway, breath shallow, eyes locked on Ramsay. Free folk and northern men crowded behind, eager and furious, but Brienne held them back with her stance alone. Sansa Stark walked in last. She moved slowly, deliberately, as if every step were chosen. Her face was calm, too calm. Jon had seen calm like that once in men who were about to do something terrible and necessary. Ramsay's gaze snapped to her, and the smile tried to become a grin again. "My wife," he purred. "You came back." Sansa did not answer. Ramsay lifted his bow, not aiming at Jon. He knew better than to waste an arrow there, but toward Sansa, as if daring Jon to move. "I always knew you'd return," he said. "You like it here. You like being." Jon moved before the words could finish. He crossed the yard in 2 strides, Longclaw flashing up, and struck the bow aside with such force that Ramsay's fingers snapped back. The bow clattered into the snow. Ramsay hissed, clutching his hand. His eyes flicked to Jon's face, and for the first time Jon saw real fear there. Not fear of death, but fear of losing control. "You," Ramsay snarled, "you're the one they follow. A bastard with a dead man's crown." Jon's voice was low. "Rickon," he said. "Where is he?" Ramsay's lips twitched. "Oh," he said softly. "You mean the little wolf pup? I sent him running." Jon's grip tightened on Longclaw until the leather creaked. The fire in his chest surged. Hot enough that, for a heartbeat, Jon's vision reddened. He wanted to cut Ramsay in half. He wanted to burn him. He wanted... Sansa spoke then, her voice quiet as falling snow. "You're going to die here," she said. Ramsay laughed sharply, desperate. "Am I?" he demanded, though his eyes flicked to the kennel gate behind him, to the iron bars, to the shadows of hounds pressing close. "My men. Your men are dead," Davos Seaworth said, voice flat. "Or they're kneeling. The Vale is in your yard. The north is in your halls. There's nowhere left." Ramsay's throat bobbed. He glanced at Jon again, trying to find a crack. "You can't kill me," he said, voice rising. "Not if you want them to think you're righteous. You'll be just like me." Jon's mouth tightened. "I'm not. You." Ramsay's gaze slid to Sansa, hungry and hateful. "You are," he told her. "Whether you like it or not. You learned from me. Look at you, so cold. You'll thank me someday." Sansa stepped closer, stopping just out of Longclaw's reach. Her eyes were bright, but her voice did not shake. "I won't thank you," she said. "I'll remember you." Ramsay licked his lips, then tried to lunge, as if to grab her. Brienne moved instantly, shield slamming into Ramsay's chest, driving him back against the kennel gate with a metallic clang. Ramsay's breath exploded out of him. He stumbled, hands scrabbling. Jon raised Longclaw and pressed the blade's edge to Ramsay's throat. Ramsay froze, eyes wide, breath panting. For a moment, Jon considered ending it. One clean cut, quick, mercy he did not deserve. Then Jon looked at Sansa. This was not Jon's justice to take alone. Ramsay's cruelty had been a cage around her soul, and cages were not broken by other men swinging swords. Jon lowered Longclaw slightly, enough that Ramsay could breathe again. Ramsay's eyes flickered with confusion. Sansa moved to the side, toward the kennel gate's latch. The hounds behind the bars snarled and pressed closer, hungry, their eyes gleaming in torchlight. Ramsay's face paled. "No," he whispered, and the words sounded small. Sansa's fingers closed around the latch. "You told me they were loyal," she said softly. "You told me they would tear me apart if you commanded it." Ramsay swallowed hard, eyes darting wildly toward Jon, toward Brienne, toward Davos, toward any face that might become an ally. "Sansa," he pleaded, and the pleading was disgusting on him. I was. You were cruel," Sansa said, and the calm in her voice was more terrifying than any scream. "Now be afraid." She pulled the latch. The kennel gate swung open. The hounds surged out in a snapping flood of fur and teeth, starving and furious. Ramsay screamed then, high raw, scrambling backward, slipping in snow, trying to climb the wall, trying to become anything other than meat. The first hound hit him low, tearing into his leg. Ramsay shrieked and kicked, but another hound clamped onto his arm, dragging him down. Teeth sank into flesh. Blood sprayed onto snow. Ramsay's screams turned into gurgling sobs. Men watched in silence, faces tight. Some looked away, some did not. Jon stood still, Longclaw lowered, stomach twisting. The fire in his chest churned, not satisfied, not soothed, just present, watching like an eye that never blinked. Sansa did not look away. She stood with her hands at her sides, breath steaming, eyes fixed on Ramsay Bolton as he was eaten by the beasts he had made into weapons. When the screaming finally stopped, the kennel yard was filled with wet tearing sounds and the harsh panting of dogs. Sansa turned away at last, her face pale but steady. She looked at Jon, and in her eyes Jon saw something lift, something that had been chained too long. "It's done," she said. Jon nodded, "Thou." The word done felt wrong. Nothing was ever done. Not in the north. Not with death coming. Behind them, Winterfell's torches burned, the flames snapping in the wind as if restless. And in Jon Snow's chest, the fire coiled tighter, as if tasting the castle's reclaimed stone and wanting the next war already. Night settled over Winterfell like a cloak pulled tight. The castle was theirs again, but it did not feel like victory. Not yet. The halls smelled of smoke and blood and the sharp stink of fear left behind by men who had died too quickly to clean it away. Servants moved cautiously, eyes down, stepping around stains. Soldiers patrolled with swords drawn, as if expecting Ramsay Bolton's ghost to leap from shadows. In the great hall, banners were being torn down. The flayed man came down first, ripped from its hooks and thrown into a heap like refuse. Men cheered when it hit the floor, but the sound was brief and brittle. Cheers did not bring back the dead. Jon Snow could not stay in the hall. The stone pressed in. The noise scraped at his skull. He found himself drawn instead to the Godswood, to the one place in Winterfell that felt untouched by Bolton cruelty, even if blood had been spilled there too. The Godswood was quiet, the snow muffling sound, the air filled with the clean scent of pine and cold earth. The heart tree stood at the center, white bark stark against night, leaves red as fresh wounds. Its carved face watched, mouth open in a silent, eternal scream. Jon stepped up to it and placed a gloved hand against the bark. The wood was cold. The carved face did not blink. Ghost lay near the roots, head on paws, eyes open. The dire wolf watched Jon with calm that felt older than instinct, as if he understood the weight that had settled on Jon's shoulders. Behind Jon, footsteps crunched softly in snow. Sansa Stark stood at the edge of the clearing, her cloak pulled close, her breath thin in the cold. Davos Seaworth lingered farther back, hands clasped, eyes scanning the shadows the way sailors scan a black sea. Brienne of Tarth stood like a sentinel, head slightly bowed, as if honoring the quiet. Jon stared at the heart tree's face and felt the fire in his chest shift. Not surge in anger, not leap toward destruction, shift, as if reacting to something here that was not flame. The gods would held old power, different power, cold power, rooted power. Jon closed his eyes for a heartbeat. He thought of Rickon Stark falling into snow, eyes wide. He thought of men screaming in the crush. He thought of fire racing behind his line, saving them. He thought of Ramsay Bolton's screams turning wet and small as hounds tore him apart. He should have felt relief. He felt only the heavy truth. Winterfell was reclaimed, and yet the war that mattered had not even begun. When he opened his eyes, the world looked sharper. The red leaves seemed darker. The white bark seemed almost luminous. For a moment, Jon thought he saw a faint red-gold reflection in the heart tree's carved eyes. Impossible, like fire trapped inside wood. His scars tingled beneath his armor. A whisper of heat. A sound rose in his mind. A deep rumble, distant but unmistakable. Not the wind, not the wall groaning far away. A roar. Jon's breath caught. He looked up at the night sky above. The gods would, half expecting to see wings blotting out stars. There were no wings, only falling snow and black branches. Sansa stepped closer, her boots soft in the snow. "You did it," she said quietly. Jon did not look away from the tree. "We did," he corrected. Sansa's voice tightened slightly. "The North will hear. They'll come now. They'll kneel." The word made Jon's stomach twist. Kneel. He had heard it in the South, spoken like a chain. He had heard it in the Watch, unspoken but present in every vow. He had heard it from wildlings with laughter. "I don't want them to kneel," Jon said. Sansa's gaze searched his profile. "They will," she said, "because they're afraid, because they're desperate, because you burned the snow." Jon turned then, finally, and looked at her. He saw the faint flicker of torchlight reflected in her eyes. He saw the exhaustion under her strength. He saw the weight of Winterfell settling on her like armor. "I don't know what I am," Jon admitted. The words came out rougher than he wanted. "I feel fire, all the time. It listens. It wants things." Sansa's face softened by a fraction. "Do you want those things?" she asked. Jon looked past her to Davos, to Brienne, to Ghost, to the heart tree watching. "I want the living to survive," Jon said. "That's all." Davos stepped forward then, his voice gentle but firm. "The North will rally," he said, "but they'll want a symbol, a name to shout, a king." Jon's mouth tightened. He looked back to the heart tree. The carved face stared without mercy. The old gods did not crown kings. They watched them die. A cold pressure brushed the edge of Jon's mind. Faint, distant, like frost creeping under a door. The dead, far away, still moving, still coming. And beneath that cold, Jon felt the warmth again, deeper now, more insistent than before, as if something far to the south had heard his fire and answered. The roar came again, clearer this time, and with it a flash in Jon's mind. Black sky, red cloud, wings beating, a dragon's eye opening. Jon's hands curled into fists. He breathed in slow, steady, forcing himself not to tremble. Winterfell was theirs. The North would come, but somewhere beyond the world he knew fire was calling fire. And Jon Snow, standing before an ancient tree that watched kings and wolves alike, understood with a sudden, terrible certainty that the road ahead would lead him not only into war with the dead, but into the shadow of dragons. The day after battle smelled worse than the battle itself. When steel stopped singing and men stopped screaming, what remained was the slow, sour truth of death. Blood drying into black crust on snow, wet while stiffening, mud clinging to skin, horses bloating where they had fallen. Ravens arrived in the thin gray light and picked at the field with bold, patient hunger. Winterfell's walls watched without mercy, as walls always did. Jon Snow walked among the bodies with a numbness that felt like armor. Men greeted him with bowed heads or wide eyes. Some whispered his name. Some did not dare. None looked at the dead too long. They had dragged the fallen inside the outer yard, Bolton men and Stark men, free folk and Vale knights, because the field beyond the gates was too vast to clear quickly, and because no one wanted to leave the dead out in the open under a sky that belonged to the Night King. Not anymore. Not after Hardhome. Not after the stories that had finally stopped being stories. Davos Seaworth stood beside a pile of wood, hands raw and blackened from hauling. His face looked carved from worry. "We bury them," he said, voice low, as if burial could be a prayer. "We put names to them." "We can't," Jon answered. The words came out flat and hard, and he hated that, but he could not soften them without lying. "Not all. Not now." Lyanna Mormont watched from a few paces away, her bearskin cloak swallowing her small body. Her expression did not flicker. "The dead should be laid in earth," she said. "That's how the North remembers." "The dead don't stay in earth anymore," Jon said. Silence followed, thick as snow. Men shifted, uncomfortable. Wyman Manderly's eyes narrowed behind heavy lids, weighing. A few of his knights glanced at one another as if they had misheard. Sansa Stark stood at the edge of the yard, arms folded tight inside her sleeves. Her gaze stayed on the wrapped forms lined in rows, not on Jon. She looked like she was holding herself together by force of will alone. "Burning is for wildlings," someone muttered, not loud enough to be brave, but loud enough to be heard. Tormund Giantsbane heard it anyway. He turned, grin gone, and bared his teeth. "Burning is for anyone who doesn't want their mother's corpse chewing their face," he snapped. The free folk behind him laughed harshly, more like barking than mirth. Jon stepped toward the first pyre. Wood had been stacked beneath 3 bodies. Men wrapped in cloth, their shapes stiff. Someone had placed a broken shield on top as if it were a proper marker. A small mercy, poor one. A torch was thrust into Jon's hand by a boy whose eyes were too big for his face. The boy flinched as if expecting Jon's fingers to blister. When they didn't, he stared harder, confused and afraid. Jon held the torch out toward the pyre. The flame did not lean away from the wind as it should have. It leaned toward the wood, eager, stretching as if pulled by a tide. Jon felt the familiar pressure under his ribs, that coiled heat that had saved them in the field. It wanted to pour out. It wanted to run. He tried to keep it gentle. The torch touched the wood. For an instant nothing happened. Then fire raced along pitch that had been smeared beneath the stack. Quick, snapping tongues that climbed as if they had been waiting all night. The pyre caught in a breath, and the flames rose higher than a normal fire should, bright enough to paint men's faces orange in the gray daylight. Heat washed over the yard. Snow hissed and melted near the base. Smoke rolled upward, thick and bitter. Men stepped back. Some crossed themselves. Some bowed their heads. Some watched with hard eyes, as if daring grief to break them and finding it didn't. Jon moved to the next pyre, and the next. Torches passed from hand to hand. Fires blossomed across the yard until Winterfell seemed ringed in flame. With each pyre, Jon felt the fire respond faster, as if learning the pattern, as if pleased with the work. He forced himself to breathe slow. He forced himself not to let the heat rush too hard through his scars. He could feel the thin line between controlled flame and devouring blaze, and he knew too well how easy it would be to step over it. When the last pyre caught, a gust of wind tore through the yard and sent sparks drifting like orange snow. Sansa stepped forward then, her face pale. "We don't burn Rickon," she said quietly. Jon's chest tightened. He had been waiting for her to speak that name, dreading it. "We bury him," Jon agreed at once, because he could not bear the thought of his little brother's bones turning to ash in the open yard like any other dead. Sansa's shoulders lifted slightly, a breath caught and released. She nodded once, and for a moment the mask on her face slipped, showing something raw beneath. Grief held too long. A man approached carrying a small wrapped bundle. Rickon Stark's body. The cloth was stained dark where the arrow had struck. Sansa's eyes fixed on it, unblinking, and her hand clenched inside her sleeve until her knuckles went white. Jon stepped closer, but did not touch. The fire in him recoiled strangely, not from the cold body, but from what it represented: family, loss, a wound that could not be cauterized. "We'll take him below," Jon said, voice rough. "To the crypt." Davos's gaze flicked to the burning pyres. "And the rest?" he asked quietly. Jon looked at the flames climbing into the gray sky and saw more than smoke. He saw a warning sent to the night. These bodies would not rise. Not for any king of ice. "The rest," Jon said, "we give to fire, so the dead don't take them." He paused, then added, because it was the only prayer he could offer now. "And so the living can sleep without hearing them scratch at the door." The pyres crackled. The smoke rose. The yard filled with the harsh scent of burning flesh and wet wood. Somewhere beyond Winterfell, far north and far worse, the dead continued to walk. Jon ched the flames and felt them watch him back. By evening, Winterfell's great hall was full again. Not full of song, not yet, but full of voices and bodies and the restless shifting of power. The fires in the hearths burned strong, and the direwolf banner hung where it belonged. Though the cloth was new, its stitching too clean, as if Winterfell itself did not yet trust that the symbol would stay. Men argued in low tones. Names were spoken like wagers. Umber, Karstark, Glover. Those who had bent to Bolton and might now bend back if it suited them. The Mormonts sat stiff and silent, watching. The Manderleys looked like men who had survived by smiling at the right time and sharpening knives under the table. Jon Snow stood below the dais, refusing the high seat that still felt like a stranger's. Longclaw rested at his hip. He could feel the hall's torches in his peripheral awareness. Small flames lined along walls, steady and warm. They made the hall feel less like a tomb and more like a home. He did not know whether to be grateful or afraid that he felt them so clearly. Sansa Stark sat on the dais with her hands folded in her lap. She looked composed, but Jon saw the thin tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself as if expecting a blow. Brienne of Tarth stood behind her, silent as a guard carved from stone. Davos lingered near Jon, his gaze sliding over the room like a sailor checking the horizon for storms. The doors opened, and a hush rippled through the hall in a wave. Petyr Baelish entered as if the hall belonged to him. His silk cloak moved like dark water. His hair was neatly combed. His smile was small and precise, the kind of smile that never wasted effort. He walked down the aisle between Vale knights and northern men as if he were walking between chess pieces he had arranged himself. Jon's hand tightened instinctively near Longclaw's hilt. He remembered Littlefinger's eyes in King's Landing, how they never stopped measuring. He remembered the chaos that followed him like perfume. Sansa's gaze fixed on Petyr Baelish and did not soften. If anything, it hardened further, the way ice hardens when pressure increases. Petyr stopped before the dais and bowed. Not deeply, not humbly, but enough to show everyone watching that he understood the shape of the room. "Lady Sansa," he said warmly, as if greeting an old friend at a feast. "Winterfell is more beautiful than I remembered." "It's Winterfell," Sansa replied. Her voice was calm, but it held no warmth. "It doesn't care what you remember." A few men shifted uncomfortably. Petyr only smiled a fraction wider, as if he enjoyed being cut. Then his eyes slid to Jon. "And you," he said, tone light, "are even harder to kill than the stories promised." Jon held his gaze without blinking. "Why are you here?" he asked. Petyr spread his hands slightly. "To help," he said, and the words sounded sincere until you listened too closely. "The Vale rode for you, for House Stark, for the North." "The Vale rode because you brought them, Davo," said flatly. Petyr's gaze flicked to Davos, amused. "True," he admitted. And I brought them because it was necessary. Jon could feel the hall listening. Every northern lord watched the exchange like wolves watching two alphas circle. They did not love Peter Baelish. They did not trust him. But they could not deny what his knights had done in the field. Lyanna Mormont stood on her bench to see better, her small face sharp. "You want something," she called out. "Men like you don't give gifts." A ripple of assent ran through the hall. Peter's smile did not falter. "I want peace," he said smoothly. "A stable north, a Stark in Winterfell, a realm prepared for what's coming." Jon's scars tingled at the last words. "What's coming?" he echoed, and his voice turned colder. "The dead." Peter's eyes flickered, just a flicker, then settled back into calm. "Yes," he said, "the dead, the strange cold stories from beyond the wall." He lifted his chin slightly, addressing the hall. "You have a king in the south who will not believe you. You have a queen on the Iron Throne who cares only for her own crown. You need allies. You need strength. You need foresight." Jon felt the trap in the words. Littlefinger always offered a rope that looked like rescue and tightened like a noose. "And you," Jon said, "are foresight." Peter's smile became almost fond. "Someone must think ahead," he replied, "while heroes swing swords." Wyman Manderly's heavy chuckle rolled through the hall. "He's bold," he said, voice thick. "I'll give him that." Sansa's voice cut cleanly through. "You will stay in Winterfell as long as you are useful," she said to Peter Baelish, every syllable careful. "You will not give orders. You will not speak for House Stark. You will not touch me." Her eyes narrowed. "If you forget any of that, I will remind you." The hall went very quiet. Peter Baelish's smile faltered for the first time, a hairline crack, quickly smoothed. "As you wish," he said, voice gentle. But Jon saw the glint behind his eyes. Anger hidden, calculation renewed. Jon looked at Sansa then and understood something painful. She had invited this poison in because she needed the antidote it carried. Vale Knights, men, steel. Without them, they might have lost the field. War made bargains with devils feel reasonable. Jon turned back to the hall's crowd. "Winterfell is ours," he said, raising his voice. "But the war isn't finished. Ramsay Bolton is dead, and his banners are down. Now we rebuild. Now we gather every house that still remembers the North. And then," he paused, letting the silence lean in, "we prepare for the dead." Men murmured, uneasy. Some nodded. Some looked away. Peter Baelish watched Jon like a man watching a spark in dry grass, wondering whether it would become a bonfire he could steer, or one that would burn him too. The kneeling began with a child. Lyanna Mormont climbed down from her bench and walked into the open space before the dais. The hall's murmurs followed her like a trailing cloak. She stopped before Jon Snow and Sansa Stark and looked up, unblinking. "Winterfell is Stark," she said, voice ringing in the timbered hall. "The North is Stark. We've bent the knee to too many liars and butchers." She turned slightly, letting her gaze rake the gathered lords. "We will not do it again." Jon's mouth tightened. He could feel where this was going the way he could feel storm pressure in the air. He had told himself he would not be a king. He had died once under the weight of vows. He had not come back to wear another chain made of gold and expectation. Lyanna looked back at him. "You fought," she said. "You bled. You held when a brother's death would have broken lesser men." Her eyes flicked to the scars she could not see beneath his leathers, as if she sensed them anyway. "And you burned the snow to keep your people alive." Sansa's hands tightened on the arms of her chair. Jon could feel the tension in her beside him. Pride and fear braided together. Lyanna's voice grew louder. "The North needs a king," she declared. "Not a southern crown, not a Lannister lie, a Northman's crown, a Stark's crown." Jon opened his mouth. "Lyanna," she cut him off without hesitation. "Jon Snow," she said, using his name like a blade. "Or Jon Stark if you want it. Bastard or not, you fought for us while trueborn men hid behind walls." She took one knee. The sound of her knee hitting stone echoed like a hammer. For a heartbeat, the hall froze. Then Wyman Manderly stood, his heavy bulk rising with slow dignity. He waddled forward, his jeweled rings catching torchlight. He stopped beside Lyanna and looked up at Jon with eyes like cold water. "My father feasted with your father," Wyman rumbled, "and we ate well beneath Stark banners." His gaze flicked to Sansa, then back. "The Boltons fed us fear. The Starks fed us honor." His mouth tightened. "I would rather choke on honor than swallow fear again." He knelt, one massive knee sinking down. A ripple ran through the hall. Lords looked at one another, measuring the moment. House Serwyn's man stepped forward and knelt. A Mormont warrior followed. Then a few more. Then another. Like cracks spreading through ice, the resistance broke. One by one, the northern lords moved into the open space and went down on one knee, heads bowed. Even some of the Vale knights lowered their helmed heads in solemn recognition, not because the north was theirs, but because they understood the gravity of what was happening. A king being made was a dangerous thing. A king being made in winter was more dangerous still. Jon stood frozen, the hall spinning around him in a slow blur of breath and fur and steel. "No," he tried, but the words sounded small against the scrape of knees on stone. Sansa rose from her seat and stepped beside him. She did not kneel. She did not bow. She simply stood there, shoulder close to his, like a support brace and a warning. "They need this," she murmured, barely moving her lips. "If you refuse, they'll fracture. They'll fight over who leads. They'll waste time we don't have." Jon's throat tightened. He looked down at the kneeling lords and saw faces lined with hunger and fear, with stubborn hope. He saw men who had lost sons and brothers on the field and still knelt because they needed something solid to hold on to. He saw wildlings at the back watching with wary curiosity, understanding little of kneeling but understanding the hunger behind it. He looked toward the torches lining the walls and realized they had changed. The flames were higher now, brighter, as if the hall's very fire leaned toward him. Jon felt it, felt the warmth tugging at his chest like a tide. The fire inside him stirred, hungry and proud, as if it understood crowns better than Jon did. He forced himself to breathe slow. "My lords," Jon began, voice rough. "I am not. You are," Tormund Giantsbane called from the back, voice booming. "Whether you like it or not, you're the one who stands when others fall." A few men laughed, harsh and relieved. The sound broke something in Jon, not in a bad way, in the way ice breaks under a boot and reveals water moving beneath. Jon looked down at Lyanna Mormont, tiny and unbowed even on her knee. He looked at Wyman Manderly, heavy with history. He looked at Sansa, eyes steady, jaw tight, daring him to run from what the North demanded. He thought of the dead in the dark, patient and endless. He thought of the wall glowing red gold from within. He thought of the roar he heard in his mind. Fire calling fire. He swallowed. "If you name me king," Jon said, voice carrying through the hall, "then you follow me into the war that matters. Not just wars for castles. Not wars for pride." He gestured slightly northward, as if the direction itself could summon the threat. "The dead are coming. I've seen them. I've fought them. And I will not lead you into victory just to watch you die to winter's true face." The hall was silent, listening. Jon drew in a breath and let it out, smoke faint on the air. "If you kneel," he said, "you kneel to the fight for the living." Lyanna's chin lifted. "We kneel," she said. "We kneel." The hall echoed, voices rising like a wave. Jon felt the torches flare in answer, a brief surge of light and heat, as if the hall itself approved. He did not smile. He did not feel triumph. He felt the weight of a crown settling on his shoulders without metal ever touching his head. And somewhere deep inside, the fire coiled tighter, as if it had been waiting for a king to be named. The crypts were colder than the yard. The stone down below held winter the way bones hold memory. Even with lanterns flickering along the passage, the shadows felt deep and heavy, as if they had been waiting for centuries and would continue waiting long after Jon and Sansa were gone. They walked between statues of Stark lords, tall carved men with long swords across their laps, their stone faces severe and patient. Jon had stood here once as a boy, feeling small beneath his father's likeness, believing that honor was as solid as rock. Now he stood here as a king named by desperate men, and honor felt like something that could crack. Sansa's lantern light danced across Eddard Stark's stone eyes. Her mouth tightened. She stopped before a smaller, newer tomb. Fresh stone fitted into old walls. The mason had worked quickly. The carving was simple. The name had been chiseled deep enough to last. Rickon Stark. Jon's breath caught in his chest, and for a moment he tasted snow and blood again. He had wanted to see Rickon alive. He had wanted to pull him into an embrace and scold him for running wild. Instead, he had watched his brother's body fall like a dropped banner. Sansa stood very still. Her gloved hand hovered near the stone, not touching. "He hated being down here," she said softly. "He used to complain that it smelled like old men." Jon almost smiled, but the attempt died before it reached his mouth. "He used to hide behind the statues," Jon murmured. "He'd jump out and scare Bran." Sansa's eyes glistened, but she did not let tears fall. "There's no one left to scare," she said. Davos Seaworth lingered a respectful distance behind them, lantern held low. He had the look of a man intruding on a family grief he could not share, but he stayed anyway, because he understood that grief needed witnesses sometimes. Jon stepped closer to Rickon's tomb and placed his palm against the cold stone. For an instant, warmth bloomed beneath his hand. Unbidden, involuntary. The stone's chill retreated slightly, not melting, but easing, like frost touched by morning sun. Jon jerked his hand back as if he had been caught doing something forbidden. Sansa noticed. Her gaze flicked from Jon's hand to his face. "You did that," she whispered. Jon swallowed. "I didn't mean to." "You're always doing things you don't mean to," she said, and there was no accusation in it, only tired truth. Jon looked up at Eddard Stark's statue. The stone face looked down as if judging him. Jon could almost hear his father's voice, quiet, stern, steady, telling him that a man must do what is right even when it hurts. "Rickon died because I didn't run," Jon said, the words scraping out of him like a confession. "He died because I chose the army over my brother." Sansa's jaw tightened. She did not flinch from the truth. "He died because Ramsay Bolton shot him," she said. "Don't you dare take Ramsay's cruelty and make it your fault. He wanted you to run. He wanted you to die. He wanted you to lose everything." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. Jon's eyes burned. He hated that fire and grief lived so close together in him now. He hated that he could feel heat in his scars when he thought of Ramsay. He hated that the anger felt powerful, useful, like a sword that never dulled. Sansa stepped closer to the tomb and finally rested her hand on the stone. Fingers splayed. Her glove left a faint smear of ash. "I'm angry too," she said, voice low. "At Ramsay. At the North. At myself." She looked at Jon then, eyes bright. "At you." Jon flinched, but he did not look away. "I asked the Vale to come," Sansa said. "I didn't tell you. I didn't trust you enough to carry it." Her mouth twisted. "Or maybe I didn't trust myself. I didn't want you to talk me out of it. I didn't want you to be better than me." Jon's throat tightened. He remembered the field, the crush, the fire. He remembered seeing Vale knights crest the ridge like salvation. He remembered the fury that came with relief. "You saved us," Jon said, and the words tasted bitter because truth could be both praise and wound. Sansa's gaze dropped. "Rickon still died," she whispered. Jon stepped closer until they stood side by side before the tomb. The crypt's cold wrapped around them, but Jon felt warmth in his chest. Steady, patient, waiting. He forced his breath slow. "I don't know how to be king," Jon admitted. "I don't know how to be whatever I am now." He glanced at his hand, then back to the tomb. "I only know how to fight for the living." Sansa's hand remained on the stone. "Then fight," she said softly, "and let me do the rest. Let me hold Winterfell. Let me deal with lords who smile while they sharpen knives." Jon's mouth tightened. "And Littlefinger?" Sansa's eyes hardened. "Littlefinger is a knife that thinks it's a friend," she said. "I won't forget it. Neither should you." Davos shifted behind them, lantern flame fluttering. "The North made you king," he said quietly. "But kings don't get to choose only the battles they like." Jon looked up again at his father's statue. The stone eyes did not soften. "No," Jon agreed, voice rough. "They don't." He turned back to Rickon's tomb and lowered his head for a heartbeat. Not prayer, not apology, something quieter and more stubborn. A promise. "We'll make it mean something," Jon whispered. "We'll make your death mean they live." The crypt did not answer. The stone did not move, but Jon's scars warmed faintly, like coals stirred under ash. On the battlements, the wind made liars honest. It tugged at cloaks, stole soft words, and forced people to stand farther apart than they might have liked. The stone beneath their boots was rimed with frost. The snow fell in thin, lazy flakes that looked harmless until you remembered how quickly harmless things could bury you. Sansa Stark stood looking out over the field where the battle had been fought. In daylight, the snow hid some of the ugliness, smoothing blood into dull stains, making the dead look almost peaceful where they lay waiting to be carried to pyre or pit. Ravens circled overhead, black against white. Peter Baelish stood near her shoulder as if he belonged there. He spoke in a low voice meant to sound intimate. "It's yours again," he said, almost tender. "Winterfell, the North, everything you were denied." Sansa did not look at him. "Winterfell was always mine," she said. "It was taken. I took it back." Peter's smile lingered, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "With help," he said softly. "You made a wise choice, sending for the Vale." "I made a desperate one," Sansa replied. "Don't dress it in silk." Peter chuckled lightly, as if she were teasing. "Desperation and wisdom are often the same," he said. He leaned a fraction closer. "And now you have a king." Sansa's jaw tightened. "Jon." Peter's eyes gleamed. "Jon Snow," he corrected, savoring the name. A hero returned from death, crowned in the hall like something from an old story. He tilted his head. "Do you think he understands what that makes him?" Sansa turned then, finally, and fixed Peter with a stare that could have frozen wine. "He understands more than you want him to," she said. Peter's smile did not falter. "I want him to succeed," he said smoothly. "Truly, a strong North benefits everyone." Sansa's mouth tightened. "Everyone like you," she said. Peter spread his hands, palms up. "Everyone like us," he corrected gently, as if offering her a compliment. "We've both survived things others didn't. We've both learned what it costs." His voice softened. "And you, Sansa, you are smarter than he is. You see the board. He sees only the sword." Sansa's eyes flicked toward the yard where Pyres smoked. "He sees the dead," she said. "He's right to see them." Peter's gaze followed hers, lingering on the smoke. "The dead are a threat," he agreed, as if discussing taxes. "But so are living queens and living armies. Daenerys Targaryen is in the world with dragons. Cersei Lannister sits a throne made of blades. The North will be squeezed between fire and steel." Sansa's expression remained unreadable. "And your advice?" Peter stepped closer, voice dropping further. "My advice is simple," he murmured. "Rule. Don't follow. The North loves you. They will come to love you more than they love him, if you let them see you. Let Jon be the sword. Let you be the hand." A flicker of something hot and ugly rose in Sansa's eyes. Anger, not temptation. "You think I want to take from Jon," she said. "I think you deserve to have what was taken from you," Peter replied, and for a heartbeat his tone almost sounded sincere. "I think you deserve to be safe." "To be safe," Sansa echoed, and there was bitter laughter in it. "There is no safe. A footstep crunched behind them. Sansa did not turn. Peter did, eyes flicking up like a man noticing a shadow at the edge of his vision. Jon Snow climbed the last step onto the battlements. He moved quietly for a man in leather and fur, but the air seemed to shift around him anyway. Snow melted slightly where his boots touched the frost-thick stone, leaving darker patches that steamed faintly and vanished. Peter's smile returned at once, perfectly placed. "Your Grace," he said, bowing just enough to show respect without losing dignity. Jon did not answer the title. His eyes stayed on Petyr Baelish, flat and cold. "What are you telling her?" Jon asked. Peter's brows lifted, injured innocence. "Only that she was brave," he said. "That the North owes her gratitude." Sansa's gaze flicked to Jon then, and Jon saw the warning in it. Don't make a scene here. Don't give him the satisfaction." Jon forced his breath slow. "The North owes her more than gratitude," he said, and turned his eyes to Sansa. "It owes her loyalty." Petyr watched the exchange with quiet interest, as if collecting details for later use. Jon stepped closer to Petyr, stopping at a distance that was not quite threatening and not quite polite. "I know what you do," Jon said softly. "I know what you did in the South. I know what you do to people when you're bored." Petyr's eyes glittered. "You know stories," he corrected. "And stories are wind," Jon finished, voice low. He could feel the torches in their brackets along the battlements behind him. He could feel the faint warmth in their flames, and he could feel how easily that warmth could flare if he let it. He kept it leashed, barely. Petyr's gaze flicked toward the torches and back again. A quick calculation. "I'm on your side," he said smoothly. Jon's mouth tightened. "Then stay where you belong," he said. "Behind the lines. Quiet." Sansa's voice cut in, controlled. "Enough," she said. She looked at Petyr, then at Jon. "We have enemies we can see. Don't waste your strength on one we already know." Jon held Petyr Baelish's gaze another heartbeat. Then he stepped back. "If you harm her," Jon said, and his voice was not loud but carried anyway, "there won't be anywhere in this world you can hide. Not from me." Petyr's smile flickered, so faint only someone watching closely would notice. "Of course," he murmured. Sansa turned away from them both and looked back out at the snowfield as if the horizon might offer answers. Jon stood beside her, silent, feeling heat coiled in his chest and cold stretching beyond walls. Petyr Baelish watched them a moment longer, then excused himself with a bow and walked away with the easy confidence of a man who believed he board still belonged to him. Jon watched his back until it vanished down the stairwell. Sansa spoke without looking at Jon. "He thinks you're dangerous," she said. Jon's voice was quiet. "He's right. Night in Winterfell brought old ghosts out of stone. The fires burned, the walls held, the guards walked their rounds. But the air still felt heavy, as if the castle was remembering every scream it had ever swallowed. In the inner courtyard, the snow fell steadily, glittering in torchlight, soft enough to look like peace if you didn't listen too hard. Davos Seaworth had been restless all evening. Jon had seen him moving through halls with a tightness in his jaw, eyes searching. Davos was a man who carried grief the way sailors carried storms, always watching for the next wave. He found Melisandre near a brazier, her red gown darkened by night, her ruby catching flame and throwing it back in small blood glints. She looked tired in a way Jon had not seen before, as if the fire she had worshipped had finally demanded payment. Davos stopped a few paces from her and held out something small in his rough hand. A wooden stag carved poorly, its paint chipped, its edges worn smooth by a child's fingers. Shireen Baratheon's toy. Jon's stomach clenched. He had known Shireen briefly, gentle girl with solemn eyes, brave in ways men rarely noticed. He remembered her reading by candlelight, her careful smile. He remembered her kindness to those who did not deserve it. Sansa Stark stepped into the courtyard behind Davos, Brienne of Tarth close at her side. Jon followed, drawn by something in Davos's posture that promised revelation. Melisandre's eyes dropped to the toy. For a heartbeat her face tightened, and Jon saw something like pain cut through her. It vanished quickly, swallowed by practiced composure that no longer fit her as well as it once had. "You know," Davos said. It was not a question. Melisandre's throat bobbed. "Yes," she whispered. Davos's voice rose, raw. "Say it," he demanded. "Say what you did to her." Sansa's gaze sharpened, confusion turning to alarm. "Davos," she said quietly. "What is this?" Davos did not look back. His eyes were fixed on Melisandre with the fury of a man who had held a child's hand and promised safety and failed. "She burned a girl alive," he said, and the words slammed into the courtyard like a thrown stone. "Stannis's daughter, Shireen." Sansa went still. Brienne's hand tightened on her sword hilt. Jon felt the courtyard's torches flare slightly, reacting to the surge of heat in his chest. A spike of anger so sharp it made his scars itch. Melisandre's voice trembled. "It was for the greater good," she whispered, and the words sounded hollow even to her. "The snow, the darkness, the greater good." Davos spat, and his face twisted with grief. "She screamed. A child screamed while you watched." Melisandre's eyes shone with tears. "I believed," she said, voice cracking. "I believed it would save us. I believed the Lord of Light demanded it." Jon stepped forward, unable to stay silent. The fire inside him surged, hot and furious, and the torches along the walls flared higher in sympathy, casting wild shadows. "And did it?" Jon asked, voice low. Melisandre lifted her gaze to him, and in her eyes Jon saw something terrifying. Not fanatic certainty, but doubt. "No," she whispered. "It didn't." Davos's hand shook as he clenched the toy. "You don't get to say sorry," he hissed. "You don't get to." Jon's hand drifted to Longclaw's hilt. For a heartbeat, the urge to end Melisandre burned bright in him. Not because he loved Shireen, though he had liked her, but because he understood too well what it was to be used by powers that demanded blood and called it destiny. He forced his fingers away from the hilt. Sansa's voice came like ice. "If you set foot in Winterfell again," she said to Melisandre, "I will have you hanged, or flayed, or burned. I don't care which." Melisandre flinched, but did not argue. Her shoulders sagged slightly, as if she had been waiting for punishment. Jon looked at her and saw not an enemy, not quite, but a warning. This is what faith becomes when it stops seeing people as people. "You will leave," Jon said. His voice was steady now, but under it ran heat, controlled and dangerous. "Tonight, you will not return." He paused, then added, because it mattered, "And you will never touch another child." Melisandre nodded once, tears spilling freely now. "As you command," she whispered. Davos's chest heaved. He stared at her, eyes red, as if he might still lunge and tear her apart with his hands. Then his gaze dropped to the wooden stag. His face crumpled for a heartbeat, grief breaking through fury. He turned away sharply, wiping at his eyes with the back of his hand as if ashamed to be seen crying in a courtyard full of men. Melisandre took a step back, then another. She looked at Jon one last time, and there was something in her gaze that made Jon's stomach tighten. Fear, yes, but also recognition. "The flames showed me a king," she whispered, voice barely audible over the wind. "I was wrong about which god lit him, but I was not wrong about the fire." Jon's scars tingled. "What do you mean?" he demanded. Melisandre's lips trembled. "Fire is moving," she said, eyes distant as if looking at a vision. "Across the sea, in stone and smoke, dragons." Her gaze sharpened suddenly, locking onto Jon. "And when fire meets fire, the world will change." Jon's breath smoked in the air. "Daenerys Targaryen," he said, the name tasting strange. Melisandre nodded slowly. "She is coming," she whispered, "and so are the dead." Her eyes flicked toward the north, toward the wall she could not see. "The ice is cracking. The old spells are weakening." Something under the wall is waking. Jon felt the coiled heat in his chest tighten as if in answer. He thought of the runes under Castle Black, the red gold pulse beneath ice, the roar in his mind. Melisandre turned away then, red gown trailing through snow, and walked out of Winterfell without another word, her shadow swallowed by night. Davos stood in the courtyard, wooden stag clenched in his thigh, shoulders shaking. Jon stared after Melisandre until the darkness took her. Then he looked at the torches, at the way their flames danced restlessly, and felt the fire inside him shift. No longer only anger. It was anticipation. The raven arrived before sunrise, black wings beating against a sky the color of ash. Maester Wolkan met Jon in the solar with a scroll in his hands and a tightness around his mouth that suggested the message was heavy. The solar had been a room for quiet conversations once. Lady Catelyn's voice, Robb's stubborn laughter, the rustle of papers as men planned harvests and marriages. Now it was a war room. Maps covered the table. Markers sat like game pieces. A dagger pinned down a corner where the parchment curled. Sansa stood near the window, watching the yard below where smoke still rose from the pyres. Davos stood at the table, eyes on the map, as if staring hard enough might conjure answers. Maester Wolkan bowed. "From the south," he said, voice cautious. Jon took the scroll, broke the seal, and unrolled it. The ink was cramped, written in a hurried hand. He recognized the name at the bottom before he finished reading. Samwell Tarly. Jon's eyes moved over the lines, and with each sentence the room seemed to shift. Sam wrote of the dead, of old records, of Dragonglass, black stone that could kill whites and White Walkers alike. He wrote, with an excitement that felt almost out of place against the words, that Dragonstone was rich with it. Veins of the glass embedded in the mountain, a hoard of the very thing the living needed. And Sam wrote of a queen. Daenerys Targaryen had landed on Dragonstone. Dragons had been seen in the sky, a foreign army, ships, fire made flesh. Sam's ink grew shakier there, as if even writing the word dragon made his hands sweat. Sansa stepped closer and read over Jon's shoulder, her breath catching slightly at the name. Davos's eyes narrowed. "Dragonglass," he murmured. "Dragonstone." Jon rolled the scroll tighter, as if the simple act might keep the message from becoming reality. "He says the mountain is full of it," Jon said. "It is," Maester Wolkan confirmed quietly. "I have read of it. The Targaryens mined it for ornament and sorcery before the conquest. Maesters have long argued its value was superstition." He hesitated, then added, "No one calls it superstition now." Davos leaned forward, finger tapping the map where Dragonstone sat like a black tooth off the coast. "We need that glass," he said bluntly. "If the dead come in force, steel won't stop them. Not enough. Dragonglass, Valyrian steel, fire." His gaze flicked to Jon and stopped. Davos's voice softened by a fraction. "Whatever you are, Jon, it's not enough on its own. Not against an army of winter." Jon felt the truth settle like a weight. He had burned the snow and held the line, but he had also watched men die in heaps. Fire did not make a man invincible. It did not bring back Rickon. It did not erase the cold pressure he could feel at the edge of his mind, death waiting patient. Sansa straightened. "Dragonstone belongs to her now," she said. "Daenerys Targaryen, a queen with dragons and foreign armies. She won't give it to us out of kindness." "No," Jon agreed. Maester Wolkan shifted, uneasy. "Some would say she is the greater threat," he offered carefully. "Dragons once burned Westeros. Men remember." Jon looked at the hearth. Ghost lay near it, eyes open, listening. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, steady, harmless. Jon could feel it like a heartbeat in the room. "Men are afraid of dragons," Jon said quietly. "Men should be afraid of the dead. The dead don't bargain." Davos nodded once. "Then we bargain with the Dragon Queen." Sansa's jaw tightened. "Or we let her burn us," she said. "Queens don't share power. They take it." Jon looked at her. If she takes the realm and the dead take everything else, what will her power mean? Sansa held his gaze. Power means survival, she said, and Jon recognized the truth in it. Sansa had learned survival in a way Jon had not. Survival was not always noble. It was often ugly. It demanded compromises you swore you'd never make. Jon turned back to Sam's letter and felt, deep inside, a slow, answering pull, like a tide turning. Dragonstone, Dragonglass, dragons. The roar he heard in his mind came faintly, as if pleased. "I'll go," Jon said. Sansa's head snapped up. "No," she said at once. Davos exhaled, half relieved and half afraid. "It has to be you," he murmured. "No one else can stand before a queen with dragons and make her listen." Sansa's eyes narrowed. "You just became king," she hissed, stepping closer. "You can't leave the north the moment you're crowned." Jon felt the weight of the halls kneeling, the crown made of desperate hope. He hated it. He needed it. "If I stay here," he said, voice low, "we may win every southern battle and still lose the war that matters." Sansa's lips parted, then pressed tight. She looked away toward the window, toward the yard where smoke rose like a warning. Jon rolled the letter carefully and set it on the table. "We need Dragonglass," he said. "We need allies. We need time. And we need you alive," Sansa said, voice sharp. Jon met her gaze. "Then we make sure I come back," he said. He did not say what he was thinking. That coming back was no longer something he could trust. That he had already been pulled from death once by something he did not understand. And he did not know what it would demand the next time. The candle flames in the solar burned steady, but Jon felt them lean faintly toward him as if listening. Outside, the wind rose, carrying snow across Winterfell's walls. And far away, across a cold sea, dragons flew over black stone, waiting for a king who carried fire in his blood. That night, Jon went to the Godswood again. He told himself it was habit, that the stark heart tree had always been where you went when the world grew too loud, when decisions pressed like stone. But he knew it was more than habit now. The Godswood felt like a threshold, a place where old power listened. Snow fell through black branches, soft enough to make the world seem peaceful. The heart tree stood pale and silent, its red leaves like blood caught in winter. The carved face watched Jon with its eternal scream. Jon knelt in the snow before it, not praying in the southern way, not begging, but seeking a steadiness he no longer trusted himself to hold. Ghost stood behind him, rigid, ears pinned, as if the air itself smelled wrong. Jon drew in a slow breath. The cold should have stung his lungs. Instead it felt like clean water, feeding the heat under his ribs. He closed his eyes and tried to picture the north. Its mountains, its forests, its hard people. He tried to picture Winterfell whole again. He tried to picture Rickon laughing in the yard. The images slipped away. In their place rose Dragonstone. Black cliffs, sea spray, a fortress carved from volcanic rock, hard and old. Smoke curling from stone like a living thing. Jon's eyes snapped open. The pond at the Godswood's edge lay dark and still, reflecting the heart tree's branches and the falling snow. Then the reflection changed. For a heartbeat, the pond's surface showed a shoreline that was not Winterfell's snow. It showed black sand glistening wet. It showed waves smashing against jagged rock. It showed torches burning in a wind that smelled of salt, not pine. And standing there, impossible, clear as if the water were a window, was a woman with silver hair, Daenerys Targaryen. She stood with her cloak whipping around her, her posture straight, her face set with the kind of certainty that built empires. Behind her loomed a shape so vast the pond's reflection could barely hold it. A dragon, black as night, wings folded like a cloak of shadow. Drogon. Jon's breath caught. Smoke curled from his lips in the cold, thin and involuntary. He felt his scars warm, pulsing, as if recognizing the sight. The dragon in the reflection lifted its head and opened one molten eye. Jon felt that eye look through water and snow and stone and into him. His heart slammed. The fire in his chest surged, answering, rising like a flame finding air. Ghost growled, low in warning, but did not move. The direwolf's red eyes fixed on the pond as if it were an enemy. Jon tried to speak, but his throat worked around silence. He did not know whether he was seeing a vision or a truth. He did not know if the woman and dragon were truly there or if something in him was reaching across the world like a hand. The pond's Daenerys turned her head slightly, as if she had heard something. Not a sound. Are you there? The way a person turns when they feel a presence behind them. The dragon's nostrils flared. Smoke drifted from its mouth, a thin black ribbon, and Jon, kneeling in the snow, felt a pull, stronger than any he had felt yet. Not just toward Dragonstone, toward the dragon itself, toward a bond like a chain made of heat. A word rose in his mind, clearer than before. Not a whisper this time, but a name spoken in an ancient tongue. Zaldrizes, dragon. Jon's hands clenched in the snow. He could feel the heat in his palms, wanting out. For a heartbeat, he imagined reaching into the pond and pulling that reflected fire into Winterfell, bringing dragon flame north like a stolen torch. The thought terrified him. He forced his fingers to unclench. He forced his breath slow. The reflection rippled. The shoreline blurred. Daenerys' face smeared into dark water. Drogon's eye vanished. The pond returned to stillness, reflecting only branches and snow and red leaves. Jon sat back on his heels, trembling despite the warmth in him. He stared at the water until his eyes burned. Ghost padded closer and pressed his head against Jon's shoulder. A solid weight, a reminder of fur and bone and the world that was real. Jon rested his forehead briefly against Ghost's skull, closing his eyes. "I'm going," he whispered to the direwolf, to the tree, to himself. "I have to." The heart tree did not answer. The old gods never did. But in the silence after, Jon heard it again. Faint, distant, rolling through his mind like thunder through mountains. A dragon's roar. Morning brought arguments the way winter brought snow. The great hall was packed again. Lords and captains, wildling chiefs and Vale knights. The air smelled of damp wool and smoke. The direwolf banner hung above them, watching as if it could judge what men did beneath it. Jon stood before the dais, hands clasped behind his back to keep them from betraying him. He had slept little. The vision in the gods would still clung to him like smoke. Dragonstone, Daenerys. A dragon's eye looking into his soul. Sansa sat in the high seat now, not because she claimed it, but because someone had to hold the room's gaze when Jon spoke. Her face was composed, but Jon could feel the anger in her like a cold draft. Davos stood at Jon's side, posture straight, ready to be the blunt voice when politics tried to drown truth. When the hall quieted enough, Jon raised his voice. "We need Dragonglass," he said. "We need it in bulk. We need it soon. There is only one place in Westeros where it can be mined in the amounts we require." Murmurs. Heads turned. Some men already knew the word and tasted it like fear. "Dragonstone," Jon continued. Lyanna Mormont's head snapped up. "That's Targaryen," she barked from her bench, small voice cutting sharp. "That's Southern. That's dragons." "It's stone," Tormund Giantsbane rumbled, slamming his fist on the table hard enough to make cups jump. "And if it kills ice devils, I'll lick it if I have to." A few men laughed, but the laughter died quickly. Wyman Manderly's heavy fingers tapped the arm of his chair. "And who holds Dragonstone now?" he asked, voice rolling. Jon held the hall's gaze. "Daenerys Targaryen," he said. "The Dragon Queen." The murmurs swelled, uneasy. The name carried too much old war, old fire, old fear of mad kings and burning halls. Sansa's voice came like steel. "You want to go to her," she said. The anger in her was controlled, but Jon could hear the edge of desperation beneath. "You want to leave Winterfell the moment you're made king." Jon met her gaze. "I want to save the North," he said. "The North needs its king," Lyanna snapped. "Kings don't run south when their people are rebuilding." "I'm not running," Jon said, and the words were harder than he intended. He forced himself to soften. "If I stay here, we may feel safe behind stone. But the dead will come anyway. And when they do, we'll need Dragonglass and we'll need allies. We'll need dragons, if the gods are cruel enough to make that true. A Karstark man, newly returned to the Stark cause, eyes wary, spoke up. You would bend the knee to her, he said, spitting the phrase like poison. That's what this is. You'll go south and kneel, and we'll be ruled by a foreign queen. Jon felt the hall lean forward, hungry for the answer. This was what they feared most. Not death, but humiliation. Men often feared shame more than the grave. Jon's jaw tightened. I will not kneel to anyone who won't fight the dead, he said. If she demands my knee, to help the living, then I'll weigh it. He paused, letting the weight hang. But I won't trade the North's neck for pride. Sansa's eyes flashed. You'll trade your own, she snapped. You'll walk into her jaws because you think your fire makes you invincible. Jon's scars tingled. The torches along the walls flickered slightly, reacting to the surge of heat in him. He forced it down. I'm not invincible, Jon said quietly. I bled in the snow. I died. His voice roughened. I won't let the North die because I'm afraid to speak to a queen. Brienne of Tarth shifted slightly behind Sansa, gaze scanning faces, ready for blades to come out of words. She knew how quickly halls became battlefields. Wyman Manderly leaned forward. And if you go, he asked, voice measured, who rules in your absence? Jon looked at Sansa. He had already made the decision, and it tasted like iron. Sansa Stark will hold Winterfell, he said. She will command in my name. The North will listen to her as it listens to me. A ripple of reaction ran through the hall, some approving, some resentful. Sansa's face went still, as if Jon had placed a heavier crown on her head than on his own. Lyanna Mormont's brows drew together. A lady ruling? She said, skeptical. Sansa rose from her seat then, slow and steady, and the hall quieted again because something in her voice demanded it. I ruled enough to survive Ramsay Bolton, she said coldly. I ruled enough to bring the Vale here. If you think I can't hold Winterfell while my brother seeks weapons to save your children, you're welcome to test me. Silence. Heavy. Respectful. Jon felt a sharp pang. Pride and fear braided. Sansa had become something formidable. The North would follow her, but the North would also try her because the North always did. Tormund grinned. I like her, he declared. She bites. Jon allowed himself a brief exhale. He turned back to the hall. I'll take a small party, he said. Davos Seaworth. A handful of men to row and fight. No army. No threat. We go to speak, to bargain, to bring back Dragonglass. And to look at dragons. Someone muttered half in awe. Jon did not answer that. He could feel the truth of it under his skin. He could feel the call. Davos stepped forward, voice carrying. While the king is gone, he said, the free folk will help hold the wall. Tormund Giantsbane will return north with as many as can be spared. Winterfell will send men to reinforce Castle Black and Eastwatch. He looked around, daring anyone to argue with the logic. Because if the dead come while we're busy arguing about pride, you'll all die with your boots clean. That earned grim nods. Jon looked at Sansa again. She held his gaze, anger still there, fear still there, but beneath it, trust. Reluctant, hard-earned. Come back, she said quietly, and it was not an order or a plea. It was a vow she forced him to accept. Jon nodded once. I will, he said. He did not know if it was true, but he sighed. Do it anyway because kings were made of promises, and the North needed one more. White Harbor was all salt and smoke and restless water. The city's docks bustled even in winter, because men who lived by the sea learned quickly that cold did not stop hunger. Ships creaked against moorings. Sailors shouted. Ropes slapped wet wood. The air smelled sharp and alive, very different from Winterfell's pine and stone. Jon Snow stood on the deck of the ship Wyman Manderly had provided, stout, broad-bellied, built to carry cargo through rough seas. Northmen moved among the rigging with stiff caution, and used to ships. Vale sailors worked the ropes with practiced ease, their hands quick despite the biting wind. Davos Seaworth looked almost at home the moment his boots hit the deck. He grabbed a coil of rope and barked at a sailor twice his size about knots, and the man listened. Davos's face was still lined with grief, but the sea gave him something solid to hold. Storms were honest. They did not pretend. As the ship pulled away from the docks, Jon watched White Harbor shrink into a smear of gray stone and smoke. Somewhere up the road, Winterfell sat behind walls, with Sansa holding the north like a clenched fist. Jon felt the distance opening like a wound. He rested his hands on the rail. The wood beneath his palms was wet with sea spray, cold as ice. He felt it. He felt the cold try to bite. Failed. Warmth seeped from him into the rail until the water beaded and slid away. Davos leaned on the rail beside him, gaze fixed ahead. "You look like a man marching into a lion's den," he said quietly. "I've marched into worse," Jon replied, then realized he might actually believe it. Davos's mouth twitched without humor. "A queen with dragons is worse in its own way," he said. "At least a lion bleeds when you cut it." Jon looked out over the water. The sea was black and heaving, waves rolling like the backs of beasts. Wind tore at the sails, snapping canvas hard. The ship rocked, and men cursed as they fought the rigging. A gust slammed into them, spraying icy water across Jon's face. The droplets hit his skin and felt like needles for an instant, then melted warm, as if his own heat refused to let them freeze. The farther they sailed from the coast, the more the sky darkened. Clouds rolled low and heavy, bruised with storm. The world became water and wind and the constant creak of wood straining. Jon's mind drifted despite himself. He thought of the Godswood Pond showing him a shoreline of black stone. He thought of a dragon's eye opening. He felt, beneath those thoughts, a steady pull, like a compass needle turning toward heat. Davos noticed Jon's faraway stare. "You feel something," Davos said. It wasn't quite a question. Jon hesitated, then nodded once. "Fire," he admitted. "Calling." Davos's expression tightened, but he did not mock. He had seen enough to know the world's rules were changing. "Then make sure it doesn't call you into the sea," he muttered. Hours passed. The storm worsened. Waves slammed against the ship's sides, sending spray across the deck. Men tied themselves to ropes. The mast groaned. The wind screamed like something alive. Night fell early beneath the clouds. The sea became a black void. The ship's lanterns burned like small trapped stars. Jon stood on deck anyway, refusing to go below. He needed the air. He needed the horizon. He needed to see the shape of what he was sailing toward. Then, through a break in the clouds, he saw it. Far in the distance, beyond the black water, a jagged line rose, dark cliffs cutting into the sky like a broken tooth. Dragonstone. Even from leagues away, Jon could see a faint red glow along the rock face, as if the mountain held a living ember in its belly. Smoke curled above it, thin and constant. Jon's scars warmed. The fire in his chest surged, not wild, but eager, like a hound smelling home. Davos squinted into the darkness. "There," he said softly. "That's her." Jon stared at the black island fortress and felt the pull become a steady pressure, as if the world itself were drawing him in. A shadow moved behind the clouds above Dragonstone. Vast and slow, wings beating unseen. For an instant, the darkness overhead seemed to thicken, and Jon felt it in his bones like thunder. A dragon. The shadow passed. The clouds closed. The sea raged on. Jon's breath came out as smoke, and he realized his hands were gripping the rail hard enough to make the wood creak. He did not know what waited on that black shore. A queen, an enemy, an ally, a test that would burn the last of Jon Snow away. But he knew one thing with sudden clarity. When he stepped onto Dragonstone, fire would be looking at fire, and Jon Snow would have to decide whether he was still a man who carried flame, or something flame had chosen to wear.